And I'm so tired of people's animals being an issue in their relationships. If you don't want a dog, you should say that. If your dog is a deal breaker, you should say that. Welcome back to another episode of Positively Uncensored, your favorite reality TV and interview podcast. It's your host, Leah, and today we are going to be diving all the way into Married at First Sight, episodes 5 and 7. Now, before we talk about these episodes, I want to let you know that I just guest appeared on a podcast called Altar Call, a Married at First Sight podcast. I got the chance to talk to Tane. She was absolutely amazing. If you've never heard of this podcast, but you love Married at First Sight, head over, listen to our joint episode. I'm so excited. We talked all things episode 7. So if you want to hear me talk about episode 7 twice, then you can do so. Before we get into the episode, just some general things. I want to remind everybody that elections are important, and not just the election that comes around once every 4 years. The news of people losing their SNAP benefits has officially come to fruition. It's disgusting. It's despicable. If you have any extra money that you're able to donate to the food banks, any extra time that you're able to donate to the food banks, if you have any extra non-perishable items that you're able to drop off to the food banks, all of those things would be kind to do. As well as, like I was just saying, a lot of people wonder, how does my state turn red? What is happening? We were once a blue state. Well, that happens slowly, the progression of the counties turning red, then the state turning red. You can participate by helping your county as well as voting in your state election. Episode 5 starts off in the awkward car ride with Derek and Meghann driving home from their paddleboard confrontation. Now, remember at this point, because I'm going to change my mind on Meghann, and I'm going to say that sometimes she's right and sometimes she's wrong. In this instance, she's absolutely wrong. As I said in episode 4, I don't think that Derek was attacking her. I think that he was bringing things to her as nice as he possibly could. She's cracking her knuckles in the passenger seat. You can tell that she's upset. And we pan over to Will swinging in the hammock, waiting for Brittany to return home from eating chicken fingers. Because if you remember in episode 4, her and Will got frustrated with one another. She removed herself from the apartment after saying that she was going to shower and winded up downstairs having some food. It could be that she was hangry and after showering realized this. Either way, she just needed some time. Now, Will asks Brittany where she was when she gets back to the apartment and if she's reflected more on their conversation. He extends an olive branch to Brittany, which I thought was important to point out, and he hugs her, gives her a kiss, and tells her that it's okay to need space. Back over to Meghann and Derrek. They smooth things over for now. And it's funny that I put this in my notes because I was taking these notes real time and I just knew that they would get into another argument. Meghann talks about how she's not used to someone holding her accountable or the two of them holding each other accountable, and she's typically an avoidant person. So this is a really big adjustment for her. Derek relates to this because he's also somebody who tends to avoid things, and they have a conversation about how he wants 2 to 3 kids. And they talk about Meghan's fears surrounding becoming a mom. She wants to be a mom, but she has some fears around childbirth and the pain aspect. At this point, I just want to note that even in this conversation, when Derek asked Meghann what she could possibly be scared for, I don't know if Derek doesn't have very much experience watching childbirth or learning about the changes that happen in women's bodies, the complications that can happen, the postpartum of it all. I don't know if Derek's not familiar and if he's just like, listen, the end goal outweighs all of those things. And I'm sure that for a lot of people it does, but I just feel like he's minimizing childbirth. Like, of course she's going to have fears surrounding childbirth. That doesn't mean that she doesn't want to be a mom. She's frozen her eggs. we see a tandem bike ride date with Pat and Rhonda and Britt and Will, and the guys and girls, after they finish their bike ride, split up and have a conversation. Will and Pat have a conversation, and Will says that in his last relationship that he isn't used to all of this arguing. People he's dated before, they don't have arguments like this. And Pat was like, I'm going to be honest with you. That's very unusual. You should have healthy arguments as you're getting to know somebody. It means that you're invested. It means that you're trying to be malleable and move to accommodate the person, and vice versa. I thought that this was good feedback from Pat because relationships aren't all easy. Now, on the flip side of that, relationships aren't meant to be constant complications. They can't be all light and airy like what Meghann wants, but they can't be entirely heavy the entire time. Brittany talks about how she, the evening before, ended up leaving a conversation without telling Will where she was going, taking some time to herself. And Rhonda tells Brittany that this is a good thing that she's independent and knows how to take care of herself, and winds up talking about the fact that Pat was in a relationship 6 months ago for 3.5 years, and that Pat felt judged by this, and that Pat honestly is just a little bit too sensitive. She ended up turning this into a complaining session about Pat. He's so sensitive, he's insecure. She's worried that Pat is attempting to close the age gap. And I think that there needs to be a median point between talking shit about your spouse and getting support from others who are going to a similar experience. And I think that Rhonda was trudging into the territory of talking shit about her spouse. It's also interesting that when Rhonda feels wronged, she has a very different disposition about herself than she does normally. It goes from being, you know, pretty calm and collected, but eccentric and having positive, fun energy to just a dark storm cloud. And, she'll say profanity. She looks like she would be the type to just like slam the door or slam the cabinet. It's just like she has full body reactions, whether it's positive or negative. I think that we're starting to see what Rhonda's kids warned us about, which is it's her way or the highway, and she can sometimes be very difficult. Now, I'm going to come back to this because I believe that I figured out on the Alter Gall podcast what the real issue is between Rhonda and Pat, but we see that more in a later episode. The entire group goes on a catamaran, and Jalen says that Josh told her that he's falling in love. Will is enjoying getting to know Brittany. He thinks that she's gorgeous, great to wake up to. And Belinda and Chad's update was that there were things that they were trying to work on. At this point, I thought that things weren't going well for Belinda and Chad, and found myself pleasantly surprised by the end of the episode. I think there's a lot of confusion this season on if people are truly into their partners or if they're just appeasing the process. And I think that Belinda's energy is a little hard to read if she's not as interested, or if potentially she's just a little bit reluctant or a little bit more cautious about things than Chad. I can't get over the fact that Josh won't ever just let Jalen be. As they're on this boat, he says, "Oh my God, like when are we ever going to have the chance to jump off a catamaran in Panama again?" And she's like, "Okay, never," obliges him and jumps in the ocean. She has a good time, right? She seemingly has a good time. She's smiling, she's laughing, she's excited she took the experience. But I don't like the fact that Josh won't take no for an answer. He doesn't let her advocate or have boundaries. There's a difference between pushing your partner to explore exciting things and just never letting them say no. We have yet to hear him accept a no and not push her outside of her boundaries. I want to see him tone things down and and allow her to just be. He's very forceful, very pushy. And Belinda even is watching this and saying, you know, he needs to learn to accept her. Like, I have anxiety, but she's my daughter. She has even more anxiety. Chad tries to corral this by saying, you know, she's with her husband, she's fine, but this is her husband she's known for a month. My issue is when she says no, he doesn't respect this in terms of if he thinks the benefits outweigh her own fears or insecurities. At this point in the relationship, if I was Jalen, I would start to feel a little bit resentful. And if not resentful, there would have already been a conversation that I'm sure would be on camera because it would probably get a little bit heated, where I just point out the fact that life is not going to be like this, where I'm bending for you all of the time. We are on our honeymoon. I've never been to Panama. I want to experience that. But back in our daily life, I'm not going to be bending for you just all of the time. Like this is going beyond me stepping outside of my comfort zone. You know, like if you want me to step outside my comfort zone and attend a comedy show, right? And typically she spends the evening in watching soap operas. That's fun. That could be something fun. Meghann and Derrek have a dinner date. They talk about her dog, Derek's fear of sleeping with the dog, how they'll navigate that. And I'm so tired of people's animals being an issue in their relationships. If you don't want a dog, you should say that. If your dog is a deal breaker, you should say that. Like, I'm so tired of people's pets being a conflict in the relationship because, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that feels like something very unique to Married at First Sight, as a lot of these experiences are, because most of the time, if you date somebody and your whole thing is, I hate pet hair, I'm not going to date somebody if they have one cat and you go over there and they have 10. Typically, you just write that person off, right? So I know that they're trying to like do the experience. Just know it's getting annoying. It's getting old. Okay. The couples proceed to go on dates, and we get small snapshots of each of them. Will and Brittany go to a castle. They share a kiss at the top of the castle. Brittany says that she's always dreamed of doing this. It's very sweet. Pat and Rhonda make cocktails. Rhonda just looks like a tourist. She's got her big hat on, her big glasses. She ends up bringing up the fact that Pat felt judged the other night in their relationship. And Rhonda could take a page out of Megan's book in terms of keeping things light. I said I like the fact that Rhonda addresses things, but sometimes it just feels like all she does is pick at Pat, pick at their relationship, point out the problems that they have, and she can't really be present so much as she preaches being present. Pat tells Rhonda that he felt small, and she says, it's not about you. I felt like I had to protect myself, and that's what the issues were. And in fact, I'm finding myself feeling a bit smothered. And again, the moment that Pat advocates for himself, we get this defensive side of Rhonda. In fact, she becomes a little bit volatile, or she becomes a little bit mean. I'm feeling a little bit smothered. She's just not able to sit with things about herself. And I don't know why being accountable or accepting that you have things to work on is such a challenge for her, other than the fact that it's just been 25 years since she's had a partner to give her feedback. It's one thing to have your children reflect as mirrors some of your problems, insecurities, your great traits back at you. It's another thing to and call you out on things. It's another thing to have a romantic partner or a partner who is on equal footing with you and telling you about yourself by way of showing love to you, and at times not having that received, and vice versa. So we see I think it's Jalen and Josh. Yeah, Jalen and Josh are at the pool. And again, just talked on the catamaran about how he can't let Jalen be. She says she doesn't want to get her hair wet. She had just flattened it. It looked beautiful. And he tries to push her. When are you going to be able to swim in a pool in Panama? She's like, that doesn't work all the time. Okay. That just worked on the boat. And does he let her just put her legs in on the side and watch him swim? No. He has to pick her up, and she just has to trust him that she's not going to drop him. I hate guys like Josh. It's the guys who are on episodes of The Bachelor who are like, "Do you trust me? Then you'll do this." Like as the girl is panicked out of her mind. It's not my cup of tea. It's not my cup of tea. But they end up having a conversation where they compare childhoods and talk about what they want for their children. Jalen wants a relationship that's so over the top, gooey. The parents are in love with each other and affectionate that the kids are like, ew, get a room. And Josh seemingly wanted the same thing. We see that Chad and Belinda have different definitions of romance through their conversation. She's okay with cuddling, kissing, cooking together, and that be an act of romance. Whereas Chad likes to add flowers and turn, cooking together and dinner into a date night and add some candles to make sure that it's not routine. Belinda, you guys can easily adapt to that and fit in both. I don't think that what Chad was saying was a large gesture. I think it was just a thoughtful and intentional gesture to make sure that the night feels special. I like what Chad is saying. Oh, this was interesting. During this dinner conversation, I don't know if we're seeing a glimpse of what Chad is like when he's in a bad mood, what Chad is like when he doesn't get what he wants, or really if this is just a normal reaction. And if I should give him the grace to be like, you know what? There's a lot happening here. But Chad ends up embarrassing Belinda because while they're at dinner, he's trying to have a moment with Belinda and production chimes in as he's trying to find his words and come up with what he wants to say. Basically, production chimes in and they're like, Chad, how do you feel about Belinda? Like, how does that make you feel? And he's like, let me get to it. Okay. Let us talk and let us share. Okay. And the producer ends up apologizing. It's very awkward. You can tell that Belinda is bothered by this. They end up struggling to have a conversation and they bring things up later in bed where Chad apologizes for earlier and Belinda says it's about respect. And I felt embarrassed. Like it felt like you didn't respect me. It felt like you didn't respect the situation. And he was rude, right? Being rude to their producer who is just doing their job is the equivalent of being rude to service staff when they tell you that they don't have the entree that you want at the restaurant. How do you react when things don't go your way? Now, I understand that the cameras and all of this is probably making him uncomfortable, and everybody has a boiling point. But I kind of agree with Belinda that this was odd. Let me know what you think in the comments. Brittany and Will end up having a conversation about their intimacy. She shares with him that the issue is that she felt rejected because her husband didn't want to be intimate with her. And Will says that he really just felt uncomfortable last time afterwards, and he doesn't want to feel like that again. He said that he's down to do everything but be intimate. And Brittany said that she doesn't want to be married to someone that doesn't want to talk to her, doesn't give her anything, and also doesn't want to be intimate. At this point, I wrote in my notes, what are we missing? And I'm so glad that by the end of these batch of episodes that we aren't having conversations about intimacy anymore because it was just getting weird. Without the full context to the situation, it just feels like we are missing way too much to be coming in at random moments that they deem like the most content worthy or the most interesting out of their conversations. So Rhonda talks about how she is nervous to move in with Pat because she likes independence. She's also still pretty worried about the fact that he had a relationship 6 months ago. And I want to ask you as viewers, in your opinion, if you're on this show, Do you think it would be better to find out that your partner hasn't cohabitated since 1999 with a romantic partner or had a long-term relationship, or that they haven't been in a relationship for 6 months? Personally, I would rather know that they were capable of being in their relationship, ask questions about why their last relationship ended, hear how they talk about their exes. I would almost rather have that than to be sort of like, what, squeaky, what is that word? Rusty, to sort of be rusty at it. However, I wrote in my notes that Meghann and Derrek have a conversation where they both check in with each other. Their conversation gave us nothing except the fact that they are both passive aggressive and Meghann is weird. That's what I have in my notes. No other context besides that. Jalen and Josh spend their last night in Panama talking in bed about their living arrangements. Then they have a shower together, which unfortunately we have to see. I feel like if we're going to have a conversation about love bombing, I have my eye the most on Josh and Jalen's relationship. And that's not to say that Josh has pulled back from Jalen yet. We are just so hot and heavy into this relationship. It feels delusional. Like I believe it's Dr. Pia says at some point in a later episode, it can't just be all light all of the time. There needs to be a balance. There needs to be an opportunity to have a disagreement and see how you navigate that. Let's see if we can find some. Today's episode of Positively Uncensored is brought to you by Audible. Audible gives you access to thousands of audiobooks, podcasts, and originals all in one place. I love it because as much as I make time to binge reality TV, I always wish I had more time for my ever-growing TBR list. But life and life's responsibilities always seem to get in the way of sinking into a good book. I'm sure that some of you, if not most of you, can relate. With Audible, I can finally catch up on the books that have been on my TBR list while I'm driving to work, cooking, or even in the shower. If you've been meaning to read more but can't find the time, listening with Audible makes it easy. You can try it out for free by heading to the details in the description. And when you do, you're also supporting the show. Now, let's get back to the episode. And we move on to episode 6, which is where the couples finally move into their apartments, the neutral living area that they're given. After my conversation with Tane on Altar Call, I'm wondering, what do you guys think? Do you think it would be more interesting to watch them move into either one of each other's space, like see what their space is like and how clean they keep it and have it mimic real life? Or do you appreciate the fact that it is in a neutral space? And do you think that that adds to the show? Please let me know in the comments. Belinda talks about how she is curious to see how Chad treats her dogs, because how somebody treats her dogs is a big marker for how she believes they are as a person. Megan's dog, Zoe, arrives, and her dog is everything to her as well. A little bit even more so than Belinda. She looks like she brings Zoe absolutely everywhere. And she also wants Derrek to treat Zoe like a child the way that she does. Again, these are things that should be expressed to the experts. I need somebody who is a dog lover, not, oh, your dog is cute. No, dog lover, animal lover, wants to participate in having a dog. If they don't have one themselves, would help me take care of mine. These things need to be voiced to the experts. There needs to be a whole subcategory for them in the matchmaking process just about animals with very specific and pointed questions. Now, Josh told Jalen that he loves her, and they end up going to a spin class that she teaches, which leaves him absolutely drenched in sweat, which tells me that Josh, who looks actually pretty fit, I wouldn't be able to do Jalen's class. I've also heard rumors about people who do spin classes and afterwards, I think they have like, what is it, like a potassium or a calcium? Something happens to them and they end up in the hospital. I'm good on that. Overexertion, I'm good on that. If that's ever happened to you, put so in the comments. If you know what I'm talking about, put it in the comments. Brittany takes Will to her house, shows him around, and we knew already that this was a very big deal to Brittany because she talks about how important it is to her that her house reflects her. And it's also just a symbol of how hard she's worked and the fact that she is able to get her house for themselves or for herself. Now, I want to say that I also don't think that Will did enough at his visit during the visit at Brittany's house. I don't feel like he was invested, even if he had just said, like, oh my God, I love how it's decorated in here. Even if he had just opened up the bathroom. Yes, it's a bathroom, but like, open it up. Like, show a little bit of a vested interest, see all of the effort that she took to put things in certain places, or try to envision yourself in there, or make a comment about just how nice she keeps everything, or how it's a testament to her success. I don't know if compliments just come more naturally to women because we have to stoke men's egos. But if I was seeing somebody's space, a man's space, and it looked like Brittany's, or if my friend is showing me her space and I'm going over Brittany's house, oh my God, I love this. I love how you chose to decorate your kitchen. It's so spacious in here. Your lighting looks amazing. I love your workspace. This feels so homey. I love how you've made this place yours. I don't know. Is it just because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm just an amazing person? I thought that that would just be a normal reaction. However, that's not Will. And I understand that too, right? Like, you can't make somebody, like, what's he gonna do? Walk in and it wouldn't come across as genuine. Oh, amazing house, Brittany. Amazing. Like, it wouldn't come across as genuine if it wasn't. So, like Tane asked me, at what point do we kind of have to accept that that's sort of just how Will is? And that's what makes the Married at First Sight experience so unique, because typically, I believe if Brittany was dating somebody, and they talk about this later, there's interactions that they've had where she wouldn't have gone on a second date or a third date, but by continuing the situation to see if it works, it can either go one of two ways. You can grow to resent each other and things become toxic because you're forced to still be around somebody that you're uncompatible with or incompatible with, or the two of you can come together and realize that said differences that you noted earlier weren't that big of a big deal, because in the grand scheme of things, you have a lot of things in common. It can go either way. So like I said, I don't think Will was like trying to be snarky. I just think that this is kind of who his personality is. But because we saw him be so animated with his friends, like, I'm like, can't you just, like, I don't know, judge it up for just a few minutes to make her feel good? Rhonda shows Pat her home, and all I could think as we're looking at this is it reminds me of a house out of the movie Practical Magic. It's very eclectic, very eccentric, very her. I would move into her house. I like her plants. I like how she's decorated. Now, we see a video from Derek on the GoPro telling us that he had a sleepless night because of Zoe, and then they proceeded to have a disagreement on who should be walking her. Derek is taken aback because he was asked to do things for Zoe alone. This is starting to feel like chores. This is her dog. And my thoughts on this might be unpopular. Okay, I get it. Is it fair to expect somebody that you're dating to take care of your dog? Honestly, I'm so sorry. This is marriage and they're living in the same apartment. I'm gonna say for now, yes. Let me give you a caveat. Let's say Derek had an allergy, which should have been vocalized if that was the case, because that would be an issue for somebody who has a dog. But let's say Derek had an allergy. Or let's say the situation is reversed, right? And Meghann is home, but Derek owns a Cane Corso or a St. Bernard, and she cannot handle this dog. Like, she can't handle him. It's dangerous to walk him. He'll run away. I can see how that would be an issue, because unless we have a big backyard for me to be able to take this dog out, I cannot commit to walking him downstairs because he could also run away with me walking him. That's one thing. But I don't understand how you can cohabitate and be in the same space as a living animal and as a dog, and not feel bad that if you don't decide to take them for a walk that they can't go to the bathroom. Like, for me, I just think that that's selfish. Like, okay, yes, it's Megan's dog, okay? But if you're the one who's home in the house and the dog is standing at the door, you're just going to ignore and then you're going to go to the bathroom in 15 minutes and relieve yourself. I think that's fucked up. Like, I sort of think that that's about being a compassionate person. I'm not I'm not sitting here and saying that like Zoe's supposed to go for a mile walk a day, and that's your job now, not mine. That would be unfair. But just like a basic little walk outside during the day, because she has to use the bathroom or because it's been hours and you want to stretch your legs too. Zoe is 5 pounds. She also barely makes any noise. She's like the sweetest dog ever. I don't see the issue. I thought that Derek was being very rigid and perhaps even impractical. Like, I just think that that's kind of callous to be like, no, she can wait until you get home because she's your dog. There may be a lot of people that disagree with me, and that's completely fine. Absolutely. But given the fact that they are on Married at First Sight and they have to be living together and they don't really have a choice and they're enmeshing themselves in their partner's lives, I think if the expectation is just, hey, if you're home and she's whining, can you take her out to pee? And then I'll take care of everything else when I get home. I don't think that's that big of a deal. I really don't, especially since you're upset that Meghann is talking about the very real pains during childbirth. I just think it's like a bit of twisted expectations there. So, anyways, Derek and Meghann have a conversation with Pastor Cal, and this was a very good, productive conversation because Pastor Cal got to see firsthand how both of them, honestly, can be the problems in arguments. Derek is passive aggressive, Meghan's aggressive, right? Both of them want to avoid the issue, so by being forced to talk about it, they get combative. Derek may not be as loud as Meghann and as boisterous, but the shift in his body language and the overall feeling that you get from Derek, he's just passive aggressive, okay? The move away of the hand, the sitting up, the twisting of the body. He does things to show that he's upset and that he's emotionally involved in whatever's going on. And Meghann is the only one who sort of gets blamed for it. That's what my opinion is. Will and Brittany also talked to Pastor Cal. And also let me know in the comments, is Pastor Cal like the big guns? Like, is he like the big kahuna of the show? Is it Pastor Cal who's reserved for the couples who have the most amount of conflict to work out? And then Dr. Pia is sent in if they have a little bit less conflict to work out. And then Dr. Peppers, we barely see her anymore. So I don't even know what her story is. So Will and Brittany talked to Pastor Cal about intimacy. She needed to hear him say that he didn't regret it. Brittany also really struggles with being vulnerable. Again, I wish that we were just getting more context because at first the issue was seeming like they just didn't take proper precautions and wear a condom or have birth control. Then the issue was sort of like Will seemed like he was uncomfortable, right? Like, I don't appreciate just getting snippets of the conversation because it gives people the opportunity to be able to push a certain narrative, like what Akechi tried to do last season with MM. So I was happy to see more of their conversation. I understand more the issues behind the intimacy. He was basically saying, look, now I'm uncomfortable. You're having a little bit of a panic about the precautions that we didn't take. So why don't we not do it? Because what's not being said and communicated is I think that Will also felt like Brittany regretted it. Like, I think that it was an experience where they were both feeling the same thing, and I don't know that they realized that or vocalized that to each other. Anyways, they end this conversation by making a promise to each other on how they're going to deal with their future confrontations. Rhonda and Pat have this very contentious conversation about biking as they're waiting to meet with Dr. Pia. And honestly, thank God this conversation happened right before Dr. Pia got there, because I think that it impacted Rhonda's mood, and Dr. Pia was able to see firsthand like how reactive Rhonda can be, because she doesn't always act like this, nor does she seem like she would react the way that she does. I find Rhonda's reactions to be surprising, even despite the warning that we got from her children. So they talk about bike club. um Pat loves to bike. He was going to bike earlier in the day, but he didn't get a chance to. She ends up bringing up a bike club that she's familiar with. I believe it was called the Trailblazers. Pat's like, okay, thanks for the information. I'll look into it. I also have a buddy who knows about the bike club, so I'll find out about it if I want to. Basically, like, Rhonda, like, can you ever take the hint? Not everything you say is the most interesting thing. As much as you accuse Pat of trying to make it about himself, you don't always have to say something to be a part of the experience he's talking about. He doesn't have to think that the Trailblazers is an esteemed biking group. He doesn't have to want to hear you talk about it just because you want to talk about it, just because you want to showboat this knowledge that you have, or show that you're interested in his hobby. You can just let him talk about something and then move on to the next thing if he wants to. He's the, I felt like this entire thing was very weird. She was upset that he didn't want to hear more about it. It's all odd, okay? Now, as Dr. Pia gets there, they have a conversation where Pat talks about how he felt like the other day he was being very intentional at Rhonda's house to let her share things about herself and not jump in and talk about himself. She ends up bringing into the fact, she ends up just goes straight into complaining about Pat. There's really no other way to phrase it. She ends up complaining about Pat. And Dr. Pia asks now, like, wait a second, what is this bringing up for you? And Pat is able to say, frankly, I feel attacked. Or, I know attacked isn't the right word, Rhonda, but I guess I just feel like you're too direct. And it was obvious to me that Pat keeps a lot of things to himself, and he even says so because he's worried about hurting other people's feelings. Okay. And with Rhonda, I get that because she has such a big reaction, even when he says something so small, but she's being very curt, if not condescending, when she brings things up. So I'm not saying that to fight fire with fire is the answer here, but I don't know. I don't know if Pat needs to be more firm when talking to Rhonda at times. Basically, after Dr. Pia gave Pat the space to feel how he felt as Rhonda is sitting there and complaining about him, Rhonda immediately puts distance between herself and Pat. She's scooting away. Her and Derrek communicate pretty similarly. And Dr. Pia notices, and she's like, okay, well, look what happens from you when he is honest. It's his fears. He's scared that you're going to be angry at him, get upset, have your feelings hurt, and as soon as he shares the smallest thing, you are exactly those things. She begins swearing and crying, and saying that now I feel like a wall needs to go up. And this is where I say Rhonda's kids were right. Okay, unfortunately, and this is what I said on my TikTok, Rhonda has learned to be alone and depend on nobody but herself these last 25 years. And Pat, and she has learned to see the value in just herself and her own experience. And Pat has learned to see the value of companionship, hence the fact that he was in a 3.5 year relationship just 6 months ago, right? And he talked about dating and the woes of dating, right? Because Rhonda, as I was stating earlier, has gotten no feedback on herself for these last 25 years, she is defensive the moment that she gets any. Okay. She thinks that her role is to just be the critic. She has nothing to work on. She's bringing everything to this relationship. She doesn't have any bad practices because she hasn't been in a recent relationship. She's had time to work on herself, when in fact, she's had so much time to work on herself that she only knows herself to be the center opinion. She is the guide. She is the guiding moral compass. If it doesn't make sense to Rhonda, then it doesn't make sense. And she has centered her perspective so much that to allow space for somebody else's makes her feel like she's giving up her right to have an opinion and her right to hold space. And it makes her feel attacked. And that's why she needed to be in therapy for a long time prior to this show. She ends up leaving their appointment. Like I said, she was swearing around the apartment in a bad mood. And that's how the episode ends as we get into episode 7. Episode 7 starts with Josh and Jalen going rollerblading in what looked to be like a high school gym. And again, this is the 7th episode in a row where we are doing activities that I can tell that Josh planned and Jalen didn't, but she's bending for him even as we're back now in Austin. Derek and Meghann are apparently in a good place with themselves and with Zoe. And I think that Zoe is just absolutely hilarious because, as dogs do and cats, they find who least likes them in the room and they want to win you over, or they just want more to do with you for whatever reason. Maybe they find you interesting because you don't like them. Maybe they're trying to win us over. But the fact that Zoe went and stood over by Derek and was like, "No, I like you," during their little walk, and then wanted him to hold the leash. I think she's absolutely hilarious. I love Zoe. I don't know. I would take Zoe out as many times a day as Zoe needed, but that's just me. Will and Brittany have a cute conversation after their work days. She ends up cooking salmon for him, and he sits with her while she's cooking, with it, which is my favorite thing. I love nothing more than when I'm cooking for my partner to be sitting in the kitchen with me, because I don't really want to be cooking, but I'll cook for you because I love you and we have to eat. And it makes it feel like there's more love in the food when you're just sitting there and talking as you're cooking it. So I really enjoyed that. I think that he is putting into action the things that Brittany asked from him. I enjoy seeing it. We watch, oh, yeah. We watch Jalen cook for Josh. She attempts to cook a steak, which ends up entertaining him. And I'm gonna let you know that I have a lot of my notes for my episode out of order, but all of these things happened in episode 7. So I have noted here that Chad ends up deciding to cook for Belinda and her children. And because Belinda and her children are invited, we get to see Josh and Jalen attend this cookout. Now, first of all, Chad looks like he's a great cook. Everybody was complimentary. Belinda's even a little bit intimidated. I like the fact that Chad is well rounded. He likes to dance, he likes to cook. I hated the American flag decor that he put up just because it gives MAGA. I know he was in the military, so that's probably the reason why, but I was just like, what a choice. It was the size of the balcony as well. Just a very, can it be gaudy? Like, it was very gaudy. It was a statement. It was a huge statement, right? But anyways, I like how you can tell that Chad's a girl dad. Okay. At the cookout, they end up having a conversation, Belinda and her mom, to the side, about how good the food was and about the post-nup. And Jalen was talking about how she was going to sign it, but now she's having some second thoughts. And her mom is telling her, basically to be cautious. I I was confused okay, because here's the thing. A prenup and a postnup are to protect both individuals, right? So it's a good thing for her. But I understand her mom saying, like, listen, I don't think you should just sign something that him and his business partner have drafted up. You can amend things so that you're not getting zero. You can put measures in place to protect yourself. If her mom is more or less saying, hey, let's have an attorney look this over before you sign this, yes, you should sign the post-nup, but you should also make sure that if you ever change your mind, if you ever don't want to work, if you ever can't work physically, that you aren't just going to get nothing from your husband. So I understood Belinda's concerns. Again, we don't ever get to see really a full conversation. So I don't know if she just doesn't want Jalen to sign it at all, or if she wanted Jalen to make some adjustments. So that was a little bit confusing. We also see Derrek go to the brewery and have lunch with his friend Scott, or maybe it's Steve. And they end up talking about if him and Meghann have had the conversation about kids. And Scott encourages Derrek to not compromise on his desire to have kids, because he would hate to see Derrek fall in love with somebody just for them to not have the same goals as Derrek. To which Derrek starts to feel a little not assured, despite the fact that him and Meghann have already had these conversations, and leaves the lunch not feeling good. He didn't really have as many answers to give his friend as he would have liked. And I would like to say, I may be projecting, but this entire conversation just bothered me. It's not his friend's business. Producers probably had his friend ask the question, but just everything he was saying, I mean, I just don't think that you should have to compromise. I'm not saying that I disagree and that men can't decide that they want to be fathers in their life, but there was a lot of things that this was leaving out. Like, first of all, in my personal opinion, this is an inappropriate conversation. This is a talk, but that's deeply personal between Derrek, between Meghann. He could have said, "Yes, we've talked about it. I'm going to keep that private between the two of us." Or, "Yes, we've talked about it. We're still figuring things out." He didn't need to fill his friend in to the extent that he did. If you are in that much worry, go have a session with one of the therapists, but I don't think that you need to bring that out to your friend and potentially get the incorrect feedback, which is exactly what I believe that his friend did, because the way that he goes into the following conversation with Meghann was inappropriate. Second of all, it doesn't leave any space for, okay, she's frozen her eggs. That's intention. She wants to be a mother. Does he need to talk about Meghan's fear of childbirth with his friend? Again, that's so deeply personal. It's not his business. He's not the one in the relationship, and he hasn't heard Meghan's side of things. The entire thing just felt very weird to me. And I'll come back to that in just a second. And why? Because Derrek ends up bringing this up to Meghann. Now, we see Rhonda and Pat at her house gardening, and she puts him to work. He is picking up potted plant after potted plant, and she ends up in the middle of it wanting to talk about her fears of them living together. And Rhonda, shut the hell up. We have heard keep an internal thought. Keep an internal thought. Not everything needs to be shared. Get a fucking journal. Learn to work things out on your own. How can Pat help you feel more secure about him living in there, like living with you? That's you and your process and you coming to terms with the comfortability. There's nothing he can do. There's nothing that you've given him to make you feel better. There's nothing that he's done to not put you at ease. You are simply projecting. There's no solution to this. Why do we have to talk about this? Again, it's like the biking thing. You just want to hear yourself talk. And at this point, it's draining. It's draining. I would have put that pot down and been like, you can finish. You can finish. I'm good. Okay? But Pat didn't do that because Pat's a good guy. The next thing that we see is the session between Josh and Jalen and Dr. Pia. And thank God for Dr. Pia saying, okay, you guys are doing great. That's awesome. But you guys are going to have a conflict at some point. So let's try to see how your relationship will respond. Let's set up a couple of scenarios. Let's see some things that you guys agree, disagree on. And they end up on the topic of the post-nup. This conversation was so weird. I already had questions, but I'm just left with even more. We go from Josh stating that his business partner would like to have him sign a post-nup and he had his wife sign one, to Josh feels confident in Jalen. He's seen her work ethic. He believes her when she says that she doesn't want his money. And that's enough for him to feel secure, give that feedback to his business partner. And both of them, his business partner, approve this, be okay with him not giving her a post-nup anymore. We've known each other for 25 days. Listen, she says she doesn't want my money. That's enough. I am not buying this. There's either not a business partner or there's a business partner who didn't give his wife a post-nup but acted like he did because Josh felt uncomfortable bringing this up directly and advocating for himself. Or these are two idiots. Then his business partner is 18 years old. And despite their success that they're having in the business world, his business partner is truly like, well, she said she wouldn't do it. She said, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I don't care. $500,000 a year we make. I don't care. She can. It just doesn't make sense. Or your business partner never wanted you to do that. You didn't feel comfortable, like I said, again, advocating for yourself, and you just made up the whole thing. Like there's only a few situations and none of it makes sense. His response doesn't make sense. How did we go from this is mandatory, I have a business and I have assets to protect, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to protect those either. So just generally, I'm very confused. Very confused. Okay. Jalen winds up at her mom's house to check in with her, and she sees the note that was left by Chad calling her sweetheart, saying something nice, and basically says that she loves seeing this. She never got to see her mom have this type of affection and attention, and I'm so happy for Jalen and for Belinda. We find out that Belinda texted Chad and said, please never stop doing this, and this is the point where I'm like, okay, I think she was just cautious. I think she's just cautious. Now, Will and Brittany are FaceTiming while he's out of town on work. And as me and Tane said on her podcast, I felt like we shouldn't have been in the room. There was so much sexual tension between the two of them, lots of chemistry. I mean, it was just hanging in the air. You could cut it with a knife, okay? They had a lot of tension going on at that part in the episode. Meghann ends up taking Derrek to her workspace, which was in a storage unit, and they end up breaking in her pool and her darts. And she's still wanting to keep the conversation light and airy while Derrek has other plans because Scott's gotten in his head and he wants to bring this conversation back up. Okay. He ends up starting the conversation with something like, I went to lunch with Scott and he came to lunch really wanting to hear more on family planning. That's a direct quote. Scott came to lunch really wanting to hear more on our family planning. Scott's a fucking weirdo. That's weird. It's not your business. I would have been very worked up in response to this and reactive. It would have offended me. I would have been angry. I want to say that Meghann has been reactive. So I understand why Derrek is trying to bring things up and be like, it's not me. My friend is wondering because he doesn't want to set Meghann off. I understand that. But it's immature and it was short-sighted because that's almost worse. Why are you talking about my reproductive system or my reproductive choices with your friend? Why did he come to lunch wanting to know about whether or not I'm willing to have kids and if I'm excited about the pain of birth? I thought the entire thing was very weird. Okay. Derrek's issue was that he didn't have an answer to give Scott, and that's because they hadn't talked out the conversation. And that's what I mean about Scott was just a way for Derrek to bring this up to Meghann, to Meghann, because for whatever reason, you weren't satiated with your conversation with Meghann the other night, and whether you need to hear her say, yes, I'll have 3 kids for you. You guys are having sex unprotected. She's frozen her eggs. Why I would be frustrated is I don't understand what signs Meghann has shown, aside from saying that she has fears surrounding childbirth to make him think that she doesn't want to be a mom. I'm not understanding where he's getting that from. Okay. Now, this ends up coming back up because she ends up walking away, and this comes up later in the evening. Leaving Derek and Meghann for a few minutes, Will comes back from his work trip as Brittany is catching up on what sounded like a very intense soap opera. I thought it was interesting that Will knew soap operas well enough to call it the soaps. And that makes me think that he grew up around his grandmother. He was also very relaxed and chill. He went right to sit next to Brittany on the couch. He didn't want anything. Brittany was checking in on him to see if she wants something. I don't know if it's like an ADHD thing or if she's just very caring and feels like she wants to take care of people who are around her. Either way, I related to Brittany sort of just wanting to take care of him or make him feel at home while he was sitting there. But I also loved the fact that he just came in. And the first thing that he wanted to do was sit with Brittany. Derek has a one-on-one pep talk with Zoe before his friends come over, which include Chad, Pat, and Josh. I don't know for why I thought that his friends from his real life were going to come over, but I guess we're not getting those episodes this season. Anyways, the girls are gathering at somebody else's house while the guys joke about hearing each other, potentially having sex below and above each other in the apartment. And they all decide to give one word to describe where they are in their relationships. Derek starts out and tells everybody that they are content. That's a lie. Will says learning. Chad says, I'll give you 2 words, fucking amazing. And Pat can't really pick one word, and I think ended up going on a side tangent as usual. So maybe Rhonda's on to something. Just kidding. Anyways, Rhonda's in the apartments and telling the women how marriage intensifies that things, makes them more dedicated, and pushes them to stay in it. And each one of them sort of agree, except for Meghann, who sort of just opts out of this entire conversation and talks about how they wouldn't have stayed in their relationship or be trying this hard to make it work if they weren't married. My question to you as the audience is that a good thing? Is it a good thing for this process for you to have to overlook things that would be a deal breaker to you out in the real world? Or do you think that they are essentially matching people who are incompatible and asking them to look past things and commit to the process? I'm really curious. Everybody is sharing and supporting, again, except for Meghann. I think Derek tells too much and Meghann tells too little. Right? Like, I think that she should rely on the girls for support. I don't really think that she is. While I understand, thank you, Tane, for your perspective and feedback, that Meghann is still processing. She's potentially very worked up, doesn't want to express things wrong to the girls. So I get all of that. Chad walks in from Guys Night lit, dancing through that door, talking to Belinda's dog as if he's his son. Listen, son, he says to him. And then they dance together. He's very complimentary. Belinda, you're the most amazing woman ever. He says, I love you. And she returns it this time. He said that makes tonight the most amazing night ever. And as I said earlier, I was sort of feeling like Belinda was just reluctant. I've heard some people thinking that Chad was love bombing. I'm not so much getting that sense from him, but I think it's odd that 7 episodes in, I don't know that we heard when Chad's last relationship was, not even from his sisters, nor did we hear why it ended. And I'm curious about both of those things because that would give me a better understanding of what to expect with him and Belinda. Now, Meghann and Derek have their final conversation, and this is how the episode ends. Basically, Megann's like, I revealed nothing at girls' night. What about you? Derek's like, well, I was pretty honest with them. And they go in the bedroom and end up arguing off camera, but still mic'd up. And this is the moment where I'm like, Meghann, I understood your anger and immediate reaction to this situation. But at this point, you need to let it go. Let it go. Let it go. We don't want to hear it anymore. Go on. Out that door. I just don't want to hear it anymore. It's too much. It's too much. After talking about Meghann and Derek for what is it? 5, 6, 7 for 3 episodes. As you can tell, they drain me. Which couple drains you the most? Which couple gives you the most hope about this season? Overall, what are you thinking about Married at First Sight? I'm going to be coming back to talk about Selling Sunset. That episode will likely be out later tomorrow after I get home from work. Everybody comment, make sure that you like this video, share it with a friend. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, make sure that you've left me a review. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe, hype, do whatever you want to do. Everybody, thank you for listening and have an amazing rest of your week and Monday.